Okay. I met John 40 years ago when Mary and he moved in next door to us. Our friendship developed quickly, and we found ourselves going on trips together. First Sun River and Black Butte, Palm Springs, then New York, Mexico, and finally Europe. We shared so many adventures and had so everywhere we went. No matter what the situation we found ourselves in, together we found humor in it, and we laughed. One instance I remember clearly was during our trip to Italy. Stephen was driving and John was navigating. Now remember, that was before cars had navigation systems and we didn't have phones to help give us directions. It was very difficult for John to navigate with a street map. We were on one of those big round circles that have many exits, and Stephen kept driving around and around. And he was waiting to hear what exit we needed to take, and John was trying to figure it out. Mary and I were sitting in the back seat, and we both looked at each other and found the state of affairs very funny. On that same trip, we checked into our hotel and were taking the elevator to our rooms. We got into the elevator expecting it to take us up to our floor, but apparently it went down instead. When the doors opened, John stepped right out and right into the swimming pool disinfectant tub that she opened before getting in the pool. John was dressed nice. As I'm sure you all know, John was a great dresser. He was well put together from head to toe. On that day, he was wearing leather shoes. He could have been mad, but he just accepted the unlucky circumstance, and we all laughed. I never saw John lose his temper. He stayed calm, even under pressure. He was admired, always kind and considerate of others, positive thinking, and he always wore a smile. Our families had a long tradition of spending Christmas Eve together. The main event was always the white elephant gift exchange. Most of us, certainly everyone in my family, brought things we already had and didn't want. We wrapped them up and hoped to pass them off to someone else. Not John. John's gifts were always new and still in the package. He had the best white elephants, Ray-Ban sunglasses, foot massager, new blankets, even Christmas decorations. It wasn't until recently that I realized that It wasn't until recently I realized how he got them. John was a good shopper. I believe he would go to Fred Meyer when they had big markdowns. He would use his employee discount and additional coupons from the paper. He bought his white elephants new. No wonder we all wanted what he brought. His gifts were the best. John and I shared an interest in the stock market. I was very interested, and John shared his knowledge with me. Many mornings between 6 and 7 a.m., while we were both watching our good friend Kramer on CNBC, we would call or text each other. One morning, I remember John phoned me. He was excited. He said, "I just bought Microsoft." And I said, "Oh, I just sold it." We laughed. We never mentioned the dollar amount or number of shares invested. That wasn't the point. It was just about friendship and sharing. I will always be thankful for John's friendship and the good memories we shared.
Testing, testing. I'm Scott. I'm John's son. Thanks everybody for being here today. when I look at the storm today, I kind of think that he might have something to do with this. Because if it was sunny, he probably thought all you golfers would be out there on the course. So, thanks for coming today. Years ago, my dad used to tell a story about receiving this mysterious envelope in the mail from an old friend of his who had passed away a year before that. And it was an invitation to a party to celebrate his friend's life. That he said he had passed a year before. And my dad always thought that was pretty cool. So while this isn't really a surprise party like that was, we did manage to wait over a year to celebrate this. So, one thing that people may not know about my dad, and Lori kind of alluded to it, is that he was a bit of a prankster. And when Lori and I were kids, he used to love to play jokes on his parents. My grandma and grandpa used to live in this building in Portland where you had to call and be buzzed in to be let into the building. And I swear about 80% of the time, he would call them up and act like a Chinese food delivery person, saying, "Your food is here, you pay now." And every time they fell for it, every time. And you'd have to say, "No, it's your son, let me in." Another time, my dad put a Cornish game hen inside the turkey on Thanksgiving. He pulled the turkey out of the plastic wrapper like it was brand new and proclaimed, "The turkey's pregnant." And my grandma spent the day believing it. And every time you look at her, she could see her all day just kind of shaking her head. She goes, "I just can't believe that turkey." She told all of her friends for weeks about it. Through high school and college, I worked at Fred Meyer. I worked at the stores. It was my first real job. And it took a while to be known around the store as Scott, because I was pretty much known as John Lesser's kid. And it was kind of a lot of pressure to live up to at the time. And back then, the big wigs from the corporate office, Mary Beth and you guys, I apologize. This is not referring to you. But the big wigs would come into the store and kind of tell the employees what to do, move things around, and this needs to be this way. And as store employees, we kind of called them the suits. And they'd, over the course of the time working there, though, one thing I noticed is that fellow employees at the store level would come up to me and they'd say things like, "Your dad was in here last week and he helped me move around racks for 20 minutes. Or your dad came in and he asked me all these questions." And different things like that. He respected the store employees and the store employees respected him. My dad, he did not have an ego. He was kind to everyone and respected everyone, whether they were a janitor or a CEO. It was extremely rare to see my dad upset at anyone. He wasn't a loud person, but when he spoke, people seemed to listen and respect his opinion. It's a style I've worked hard to emulate in my life. As I grew a little older and my dad became a grandfather, I never saw him happier in his life than he was around his grandkids. Maggie, Mason, Sydney, he loved you more than anything. Nothing made him happier than to be around you guys. He was always entertained by his grandkids and loved to take them on little adventures around town. Sydney used to tell us when she was younger, we'd pick her up, she'd stay at Grandma and Grandpa's house for the day or the night. And Sydney would say things like, "Grandpa gave me 2 maple bars today." Or, "Grandpa let me sit in the front seat of the car." That wasn't so funny then. Or, "Grandpa let me drive the golf cart down the hill." One day he sent Mackenzie and I a picture while he was out with Sydney. It was a picture of Sydney, who was about 4 years old at the time. She was standing inches away from this huge live nutria, its fangs hanging out. It scared the crap out of us as parents. I'm so glad that you kids had those memories with Grandpa, and I'm so glad you survived. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you for loving my dad.
Hi, I'm Sydney Lesser, and John was my grandpa. I thought it would be nice to share some of my favorite memories from my past. with donuts. Me and Grandpa always had a maple bar. Most of the time we split it, but sometimes I got the whole thing. One thing people don't know about Grandpa is that he made the best scrambled eggs. The secret was extra cheese and bacon bits. Another thing we did together was ride in the golf cart that they have. Sometimes he golfs with me on the putting green too. I guess it's safe to say that he let me drive the golf cart when I was 6. My last memory with him was driving the golf cart. We always looked for deer when we were out there. I'm grateful that he was my grandpa and I loved him very much. I know that if I keep these memories of him in my heart, he will be with me forever.
Now, how do you follow that? Hi, everybody. I know you can hear me, but I'll use just in case you can't. But I'm Mary Beth. I worked with John for many, many years, and a big part of John's life was his time at Fred Meyer, and that's when I was really blessed to have met him. He started in 1973 as an assistant manager in apparel, and by the end of the year, he was a manager, which that you've heard of, at our old Hollywood store. It didn't take long after that for the office to notice him, and they promoted him into the main office as a buyer. And for the next several years, he was buyer of almost every department in apparel. And back then, when in the 70s, we were called Freddie Fall Aparts. So John had a huge, it was true, yes. He had a huge, made a huge difference to all of us in the company and to the customers and everyone, getting that whole perception changed over the years and really bringing in a lot of new name brands. He was promoted again after going through all these different buying areas to what we call a merchandiser for the men's and the kids department. So the buyers all reported to him. Not long after that, he was promoted to an executive vice president of the entire apparel department. So he did very well with the company, and people knew him, they respected him. He had a great trait that he really would listen to you, and I mean, you really listen. You didn't always get your way, but he would listen. I mean, I always thought that was so wonderful. Now, I'm sure you all know about the day after Thanksgiving sales. I mean, the sock sale. I have to say that John started that 5 a.m. opening. So he's the one to blame. And so everybody from now on, I want you to think every time on the day after Thanksgiving, when you go and buy socks, you just need to think of John Lesser, okay? He retired in 2000. He did, a lot of you don't know, he did come back that holiday. He worked up at the Oregon City store for me. And he just thought it'd be kind of fun, but I really think the reason why he came back, I think Mary kicked him out of the house. I think he just was getting a little on her nerves or something. I'm not real sure, but he came back, and with the wages that he did make, he gave that to charity because that was the kind of guy he was. You know, just the kind of guy he was. I really got to know John after he retired more so than when I worked with him. What I loved about him was he had a great sense of humor. He laughed at my jokes, so I always thought that was really wonderful. Not everyone does. He had a tremendous love for his family, for his friends, and he had that twinkle in his eyes that I just thought was just the coolest thing. You know, he was just a class act, and I just want to say that I will always miss him. He was just a really great guy. That's it. Thank you. This is the one that works. Okay.
When Mary asked me to speak, I was a little surprised. I haven't been at Fred Meyer for over 30 years because I jumped ship. I went to the salesman side of it. On my way out, John said, if you'll stick around, they're going to promote you to a merchandiser. And I said, nice try, but I'm still going. And we've stayed friends. And this is one of the sad things about this type of event we're having today is We stayed friends through my business that I started in retail, and I think a lot of my love for retail came from him. He was a very positive person, and we always said we were going to have lunch. We always said we were going to have lunch, and don't wait to have lunch. You know, if you've been saying that to people, just do it, book it, and don't say later, damn, I wish I would have had lunch. So we're going to have lunch, Mary.
Yes, we are.
I had to write something up because I wish that I could have heard all this. I said I haven't been around for so long, and I need someone to jog my memory, because just seeing him, the picture of him at the top of the Empire State Building, or the World Trade Center with Julius Erving, I was there. We got to shake hands with Julius Erving, and it was amazing that we got to do the things we did when we traveled with John. So here's my little part of it here. Sometimes people believe in you more than you believe in yourself. This was John. He was a silent cheerleader. It wasn't always with words, it was simply the way he treated you. Teaching, encouraging, gently correcting, all while not be intimidating or condescending. As a brand new buyer under John's wing, I learned much more than just job-related skills. I learned life lessons and how to believe in myself. I looked up to John in many ways. My past experience with men was not good, having a dad that abandoned me and my brothers at a young age, and numerous other father figures that came and went, and then the ones who looked down on you or saw you as an object. But John was innately respectful. He didn't judge, and he always seemed to see the best in people. He was lighthearted, quick to laugh, and sarcastic without being insulting. Traveling with his harem, because most of the buyers in our group were women, and that's how we all were called his harem, because it would be 5 or 6 women and John traveling to New York. He split his time up with each buyer, so he would go, spend a half a day or a day with one particular buyer and go to all of our appointments. He had a wicked sense of humor, and yes, he was always laughing. And this story I will tell forever. One of my sales reps' name was Les Wiener. And when we are in the elevator in the Empire State Building on our way up to see Les, John would get the giggles. And he'd say, who would name their kid Les Wiener? And then we'd get there and the door would open and he'd go in and he'd shake the guy's hand and he'd start cracking up, and Les is just totally clueless, and I'm trying to keep a straight face. I tried to stay professional and I tried to stay focused. But he loved to laugh, and it was so fun. He was such a great mentor. And whenever we passed a homeless person, I know that's probably not PC, we call them houseless these days. Whenever we passed a homeless person on the streets in New York, he'd say, there's an ex-Fred Meyer buyer. So we were always very careful in what we did. It was a joy to travel with him. He always made us feel safe. We ate incredible meals. We had fun. Mary went on trips with us too, and we were just a big gang. It was fun. He treated us all very, very well. He wanted us to play golf too, though. So he would take us to the Lake Oswego Municipal Par 3 golf course, and he would try to get us to play golf on a Friday afternoon. And we were terrible. But we had a good time. These were team building exercises, right? But we still had a great time, and I still play golf, thanks to John. Not as often as I'd like, but if I adopted his mentality, I'd play as much as he did. And we should all do that too. He was also very compassionate. He'd make the rounds in the main office, and he'd come up to your cubicle door, knock, 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 check out, see how you're doing. Now, he's got a group of women. We're all hormonal at any given moment, right? And if you look up and you got that look on your face, he goes, go home. Go home. If you're not feeling it, just go home. The work can wait till tomorrow. And it was like such a blessing to have somebody say, it's okay, go take care of yourself. And then when Mary and him would come into Terra Casa, he'd look around, he'd have a few nice comments, and he'd go, God, you're overbought. Well, I was always overbought, John. So I know not everyone will have the same perspective of John that I did. We all interact and react different ways with different people. But John was always fair and honest. He always had the best intentions. He was just a great person to be around. Mary, thank you for sharing John with us. We all know that we spend as much time with our work families as we do with our home families, sometimes more. And in a way, John was the father figure I never had. Lori and Scott, you should be really proud of your dad. And you were really, really lucky. I can say with certainty that he had the most integrity of any man I've ever known. So it was an honor and a gift to know him, learn from him, and be his colleague and friend. Thank you.
Well, it's going to be hard to follow that. And the rest of you. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here as well. My name is... Sorry, I'm so used to not talking to a microphone for a long time. This is my first speech in about 16 years, so bear with me. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Jim Hill. I met John more than 30 years ago at Fred Meyer. I think, sorry. I'd take a few minutes to share some memories I have of my friend John. John loved his family, friends, and the game of golf. I know his family was his top priority above everything else. He talked about them all the time on the course, every day. I retired in 2005, and in 2006, my wife Mary and I joined the Lamp Valley Country Club. It was then that John and I began playing golf nearly every day. We just lived together in the golf course with each other, and so it was very easy for us to get together on any given time. We became close friends. Our normal foursome consisted of John, Harry John, Bob Cash McCall, myself, and Steve Bacon and Gary Funes. They weren't retired at this time, so they joined us whenever they could. I remember asking John what days of the week he played golf. As a typical thing, he says, any day that ends with Y. Needless to say that John loved to play golf. And it may be 2 holes or 15 or 18 or 26. It didn't make any difference to him as long as we were out there. I was a new golfer at the time when I joined the club. And John worked with me on my game. He was very patient with me. He had to be at that point because I was a horrible golfer. And if you could even call it golf, I'm not sure it was. But anyway, he coached me, gave advice, support, and never got frustrated with me when I would play a 6 on a par 3 or an 8 on a par 5. He was always there saying, hey, you can do better next time. As my golf game improved, I identified with a certain type of ball and clubs that I preferred to play with. I asked John once what kind of a ball he preferred. He said, I don't care as long as it's white and round. We were always finding golf balls on the course, and many of them were new or almost new. And Harry would always say, hey, if it's a logo ball, John gets it. It could be a Pro V1 or it could be a Shrix. It didn't make any difference. It went to John. And John has such a steady supply of balls, although he needed very few, because he was very seldom out of the middle of the fairway. Sometimes John would call me in the morning on a stormy day and say, hey, I think we can get a few holes in before it rains. Hey, what do you think? I said, well, I'll meet you either a hole-in-one or the tee box at 2. And we would play as many holes as we possibly could before the rain set in and had to go home. I calculated the other day about how many holes or rounds that John and I had played with over the last 14 years. It's somewhere in excess of 1,600 rounds. And you know, that's a lot of golf for anybody. So John loved going to Black Butte to play golf with his friends. And to be invited, I was truly an honor to me. John really was an element there. A number of you present in the room today made that trip to Black Butte and knew how much he loved playing golf in Central Oregon. Some of his favorite courses were Juniper, Eagle Crest, Sun River, Broken Top, and Black Butte. One of the things John loved about these golf outings was his love of food. And we had some fantastic meals there. Harry was the resident chef who made those dinners absolutely unbelievable. That usually consisted of hors d'oeuvres, main course, dessert. And when we were there, we never went hungry, we would always be full. Oftentimes, John and I were paired together as we had the highest handicaps of the group. We tried to break it up so that we had the high handicaps, medium handicaps, low handicaps, but after 4 days of golf, we had to play together at some point. So John would say, "Come on, Jim, let's get these guys." And in many cases we did, because they had to give us so many strokes. As a matter of fact, during our last trip in 2018, John won almost all our money for the daily games we played. The other thing about John that was amazing was his math skills. He could keep each and every one of our scores in his head, but we had to have a scorecard. John had a number of health issues that included low blood pressure. At one point, Mary asked me to carry a vial of salt in my golf bag in case John's blood pressure got too low. He later developed an eye issue that caused blurring in his vision in his right eye, and he needed to wear special lenses in his glasses, but none of these things stopped him from playing the game that he loved. He still hit the drives right straight down the fairway to our amazement, even when we couldn't attempt it with two eyes. The last couple of years before John's death, he couldn't play every day or even many cases an entire round. He would call us and ask, "What hole are you guys on?" And in a few minutes we'd see John coming up in his car to join us. He would play as many holes as he possibly could and then head home. I remember the last time we played golf together. He called and joined. He called and joined Harry, Bob, Gary, and myself on hole 14 and left on 17. I said he was very weak and needed to go home. 2 days later, he was admitted into the hospital, and that was the last time we played together. Excuse me. I think of John often when I'm on the golf course. Oftentimes playing around with John, one of us would hit a great drive right down the middle of the fairway, and then turn around and hit a terrible shot. Left, right, top it, skull it, whatever. And John would always smile and say, "Great drive." I know John is up there looking down this right now saying, "Man, I'd like to be out there playing with you guys today." However, I'm sure he's playing some incredible courses up where he is. John, my friend, I miss you. Thank you.